Life, dead presidents, devilish myth. Overthrow kings from their thrones cause of their negligence. Death. Real shit to start coming to light. Cause you ain't like and your wife, what? Kinda undermined and grimy. Stiff pork shaping, pork bacon, double cross Satan. Heathen.
Happy Monday. Welcome in. You are locked in to RSVP with Jill Munroe here on KBLA Talk 1580. I hope you had an amazing weekend. I hope you were somewhere celebrating the 50th anniversary of hip hop. I hope that you are comfortable and ready for more engaging conversation for the night. So, happy Monday. As I said, let me just give you a little bit of what you're going to experience tonight here on RSVP with Jill Munroe. This is the show where we talk all the trending topics and headlines in entertainment, sports, lifestyle, and culture. And tonight, as always, we have a really full show for you. We're going to discuss, we lost a legend, a titan across entertainment and sports yesterday, Clarence Avant. We're going to talk about his life and career a bit. We're going to talk about Dwyane Wade and his Hall of Fame speech. He dedicated a great deal of his speech to his father. We're going to talk about black fathers and sons and sort of discuss what that speech and those sentiments mean, especially currently, as it relates to sports and outside of sports, of course. We're going to talk a little bit about James Harden. He had a lot to say in China, and it's causing waves, so we're going to get into that. We also have a guest this evening, an entrepreneur, someone that has worked with some of your favorite talent across sports, also a business owner here in Los Angeles. We're going to get into all of that, those details with Damon Haley. We have that coming up. We're going to talk about The Blind Side, Michael Orr. He is suing his adoptive, and I say this with finger air quotes, parents. We're going to get into that legal battle and what it's all about. Some of you are probably thinking, I knew something wasn't right with that situation. Well, we're going to talk about that. We're going to get into a new law that's been passed for child influencers. Kind of goes along with Michael in a way. But we're going to talk about that and why it's a good thing for the future. We're going to get into some of Sierra. She mentioned how the effects of Black Twitter on her relationship, if there are any. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Plus, as I mentioned, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of hip-hop over the weekend. There were several celebrations all across the country. We're going to talk about a legendary group giving their final performance ever during this. We're going to talk about some hip-hop stats, of course. We're going to talk about one comedian, a male, that has come out and admitted that he is taking a popular diet drug right now. We're going to get into sort of men and their habits, their grooming, their personal body concept. I think that's a good topic for my guest, but we'll get into that in a little bit. And, of course, you know, as always, we're going to give you VIPs an opportunity to check in with us, you know. So, obviously, if you want to call in, the number is 800-920-1580. You are always welcome to call in and give your opinion. If you want to download the app and take us with you, you can leave us a message there. If you are a little gun shy or maybe you can't get to it right now, you can leave anyone a message there. Download that. Take us with you. Listen to us later if you only have time to check in for a little bit. And make sure you're hitting us up on our social media everywhere. KBLA 1580. I'm, of course, at Stiletto Jill. So make sure you are doing that. So before we get into the show tonight and all of those things, you know we have a couple of conversation starters. So we got to get into that. I mentioned Magoo he was a duet, I guess a duo, you could say, briefly with Timbaland. They released 2 albums. You are probably most familiar with the hits Love to Love Ya and Up Jumps the Boogie. Real name Melvin Barcliff. He passed away over the weekend at 50 years old. We are not sure exactly what the cause is yet, but we are sending love and light to his family. We saw several tributes online from Missy Elliott, from Black, that used to be in the group Playa, that was a part of the Basement Crew. Genuine's was particularly passionate and kind of heartbreaking because he mentioned he himself feeling like he doesn't have a whole lot of time and that he might see him soon. So, these are concerns for Black men and their health at this age. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but sending peace and love to his family. Go hit up Love to Love You or listen to what my personal favorite verse is from Magoo on Missy's Beat Me 911. That's a banger. Magoo had an interesting and unique voice. I mean, he wasn't lyrical in the sense of what we think lyrical is, but he had a lot of punchlines and quips, and I think that he brought a lot to the situation that he was in with Timbaland. So, that is the third member of the, well, I guess Aaliyah wasn't really part of the Basement Crew, but she was part of the family. That's the third member that we've lost. So sending healing and light to them. I mentioned that there's a comedian that is taking Ozempic. Everybody is on Ozempic right now. It is a drug that was initially intended for diabetes, but it has some side effects that include weight loss, and people have been snapping it up, so much so that, patients that are really diabetic in need of it for those services have not been able to catch on with it. Well, a comedian admitted this morning on the Today Show with Hoda and Jenny that he is on it. He's 54 years old, and he goes to the gym, he says, every day at 10, but that's how he dropped all the weight. So it is Tracy Morgan. We know Tracy has been through quite a few things over the past couple of years. He survived that horrific bus wreck that happened and clawed his way back. We know that weight has always been something that he has dealt with throughout his career. So he's on it. He said it's working for him and that he went and got a prescription. That's how he lost all the weight. And he said he is not letting go. So shout out to Tracy for helping himself. And, the jury's still out if that's the great way to do it. When we come forward, we will have, we will have our introduction to our guest, Damon Haley, for the evening and get into more trending topics and headlines. You are locked into RSVP with Jill Munroe here on KBLA Talk 1580.
Infusing us into fun and entertainment in every episode. You're listening to RSVP with Jill Munroe on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward.
All I need is one mic.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. As Black folk, we know how to face tragedy and not fall into despair. And yet sometimes the points of pain are felt so acutely, especially when we know full well that we're being treated unfairly by our so-called justice system that at times appears to be anything but just. After more than 30 years of public service, Mark Willie Thomas is set to be sentenced on Monday, August 21st for his conviction on bribery and conspiracy in a federal corruption trial. As you well know, Willie Thomas was found not guilty on 12 of the 19 counts the feds brought against him. This is not your typical corruption case. No lavish trips, no victim, no cash in a brown bag or stashed away in a freezer, no illegal contributions from a wealthy donor, no money received by the accused, no use of taxpayer dollars. There is therefore no need to incarcerate Ridley Thomas to protect the community. Indeed, the probation department has recommended a mere 18-month sentence. But the feds, they want MRT to serve 6 years. 6 years. How is that fair? This happens far too often to defendants who just happen to look a lot like you and me. First, they target you. Then they overcharge you. Then they fight to keep certain folk off the jury. Then they spend millions of your tax dollars prosecuting a victimless $100,000 criminal allegation. Then, typically, they win, and why shouldn't they? In reality, no case of the United States government against you is really a fair trial, if you feel me. Then, after they win, they ask for a sentence of more than 3 times what the probation department is recommending. Again, I ask, how is that fair? I read the federal government's summary document regarding the sentencing of MRT. and the charged language they use is both revealing and despicable. You can clearly see their disdain for the constituent community, for the black clergy who have stood with MRT, and mostly for MRT, daring to exercise his constitutional right to even go to trial to defend himself. The feds demanding a 6-year sentence in this case is their way of punishing an uppity Negro who dared to fight in this case, sees through this racist masquerade, and delivers a sentence of time commensurate with the crime, even as MRT appeals this verdict. There are no good times to be black in America, and sometimes are worse than others. For KBLA Talk 1580, I'm Tavis Smiley. We welcome your comments.
Keeping you informed, entertained, and always ahead of the curve. This is RSVP with Jill Munroe on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey, it's Jill Munroe. You are locked into RSVP with Jill Munroe here on KBLA Talk 1580. And VIPs, we have a very special guest in the building tonight. It is not often you get to sit across and have a conversation with someone who has worked with Magic Johnson, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, has created brand experiences and guided brands like Nike, HBO, Pepsi, Lionsgate, Sony, Frito-Lay, Nickelodeon, Moet Hennessy, and Cartoon Network. Those are just a few. I haven't even gotten into the rest. And then pivots into the beauty business with his lovely wife, who is a force in her own right. We'll get into that in a second. But I would like to welcome to RSVP with Jill Munroe, Mr. Damon Haley.
DH, baby.
DH, baby. And listen, I forgot author of the book of DH, Dreams and Hopes. You know.
Put a plural on it.
Put the plural on it, because we have lots of hopes, you know, to go along with those dreams.
Yeah.
So, welcome to the show, Damon. I selected some of the topics in the first hour specifically because I thought that you would have some perspective that we could get into. But before we get into that, let's talk a bit about you. You're from L.A.
Born and raised, baby.
Washington.
Wash house. Or the prep, if you knew.
The prep. Depends on where you attended. You know, went to college at Cal Berkeley.
That I did. Graduated.
Yep. Yeah, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Makes the distinction, because there's a difference.
More people go than graduate.
That is facts.
Facts.
And, you know, I mentioned all the different brands you've worked with, the global icons, you know. And now you have a beauty supply that is franchising.
That's right.
Here in Inglewood.
Hawthorne soon to come.
Products.
Slay with 3 Y's. Slay hair, the newest braid hair out there.
And, you know, some things coming that will be of benefit to our teenage boys. So I want to ask you, that's a lot moving, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you manage pivoting and all of that? How do you manage moving from one business to the other and connecting so many different areas?
It takes a lot of organization. It takes a lot of purpose, and it takes passion. So I don't do anything that I don't want to do, first of all, and that's just the minimal scenario. I typically get involved with things that when I wake up, I'm excited about doing. When I spend time doing it, I'm happy. That kind of makes it a lot easy for me. So I love sports and entertainment and culture, and then I can't say I love beauty. I love the business of beauty. And I like how people feel as they strive to be their best selves. That's really what beauty is about, and that's what keeps me going with that. And so not only is it running a beauty retail outlet, if you say.
Glow and Flow Beauty.
Glow and Flow Beauty. We don't use the S word. You know, that we don't use supply.
Low and Flow Beauty. That's what I said.
Yeah, we don't use that. That's another story about how that has been branded a certain way by a certain segment of the community, not our community, but other communities. But yeah, and then figuring out where the need is and where there is a gap. As we know, as we evolve and get more information, I knew braid hair was a #1 seller, and I knew I had to do my own. But then I got my wife involved, the lovely Miss Diane Valentine, and we just made it better. And so same thing about boys. We are soon to have a boys line out, a men's care line for boys because, they're never taught, certain things like hygiene, grooming, and style and how to use it. So I'm having fun with beauty. It's taking me, once again, all around the country, and soon it's going to take me to back to China. It's going to take me to Africa, and I think it's going to take me to Europe, too.
As far as take you there, by that you mean as far as working relationships, putting your product in those markets, or in what capacity?
Working relationships, taking our product there because, the braid style is an African hairstyle. So you have to go back to the continent because they're still habitually using it. And I learned that really going to New York and going to D.C. and really understanding Nigerians, women from Ghana, Senegal, different parts of the continent, African continent, come over here. They bring the hairstyles, and then of course you have the African American women. So I see myself going back. I do have dual citizenship in Sierra Leone. Didn't know if you knew about that one.
I remember that
but
a couple years ago for your birthday. You went and traced your roots. Found out.
Mama's people from Sierra Leone, Daddy's people from Mozambique.
Okay.
And so it's easier for me to have a connection and get over there. And once again, that's another thing that opens up my life. It opens up my light. And then, of course, Europe in our third store, which we're figuring out quickly, we're going to have a partnership with some black women in London to do a cafe inside the store.
Nice.
It's taken London by storm right now. So that's something probably in 2024, spring in 2024. So it'll take me to Europe. And, of course, my wife loves Italy. And so we always go over there and we'll figure something out.
Yes, she did. She had a dating show where she took single women over the age of 40 to Italy to find love and themselves, really.
Yeah. It was some young girls in there, but yeah, it was To Rome for Love. It was on Bravo. But she took some black girls to Rome to date Italian men, and so she speaks the language. She loves it. They love her. So she always gets invited back.
I did not know Dwyane spoke Italian.
Oh, yeah.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. So let me ask you, because being in the beauty business as a black man, as a black couple, right, a business that is primarily dominated by Asians, by Indians, I'm not sure what other those are, being in Southern California, what I'm privy to here. What has that experience been like, moving through that and sort of connecting? Because we've heard stories before about, as black people being blocked out or boxed out of that industry. So what has your experience been like?
It's challenging. You do have to have a certain business acumen. It's pretty much Koreans. Koreans own the beauty retail space within most African American communities because they have a pipeline. The products come from China, and actually a lot of technology comes from Japan. So that's just how it works. Japan thinks of it, China manufactures it, and then the on-the-ground entities are Koreans, primarily here in the U.S. And then there are Middle Easterners that have come over as immigrants as well, and they camp out and do stuff, services, products, goods in our community. And that's the most enlightening thing, to think that, wow, we aren't developing these businesses, but yet we're patronizing and building other communities. And it really happened, I think, in the 70s. For the last 50 years, we've taken a lot of resources out of our community and really built up these other communities. And that's what I'm able to see as I look at their their progress and look at that business model. Has it been difficult? Yeah. It takes serious negotiation. You have to be able to talk the talk, but money's all green. At least American dollars are green. And so I have a good understanding with those that want to work with me because I've been able to do something that Diane and I have been able to do things that many of us can't do. I have a big box store. I'm able to read contracts. I'm able to do certain things that a lot of us just don't, and nobody makes it easy. So it's not easy, but then again, it's not impossible. So somewhere in between there, I've been able to navigate it and get some deals I want and tell people if you want my dough, it's going to have to happen. And then also I have nationwide distributors, so I have a good relationship with people out of New Jersey, people out of Atlanta, Chicago, that if the people, have options. And so I think over the last 10 years, we've been able to figure out options. And I will say that Glow and Flow probably has the largest collection of black manufacturers in the beauty space than any other space. One, because we have the size to do it, but we go out, and Diane does a great job of going out and calling those people personally saying, hey, we want you on our shelves. So that brings some distinction that you won't find in a traditional Korean-owned beauty supply.
Do you think that your experience working internationally sort of led up or prepared you for what you're doing now as far as moving through these other markets and being, again, sort of the outside entity coming in and planting your flag?
Oh, yeah. I think that, I spent probably over a 5 or 6 year period, I spent probably half to 2/3 of my life in Shanghai and moving around China. So I understand culturally, like Asians, I know that they might not be the warmest at times, but I understand when they fare. I understand when they're being humorous and all that. So I think it kind of helps me because, they might not be jovial. They might be more neutral, but that's a good thing, And so I think that helps, if I throw out a couple Chinese verb, statements or something like that I still remember from when I was there, that just helps the process because it says that I'm just more than an LA guy. I'm a global guy, and I think you get a little bit more respect. And when I can talk about, flying into Pudong and the Puxi side, or I can talk about Hong Kong or being in Southeast Asia or Bangkok, it kind of makes them think differently that maybe some of the black people they've encountered before, which is pretty much their neighborhood type of people. So it definitely helped in terms of my global exposure to be able to deal with different types of people. So
we're going to get into this James Harden clip, right? James Harden was in China on a shoe tour, something that not with him, but you have led many a times with other athletes, some of which I mentioned.
I actually was in Guangzhou with James Harden when he was with Nike.
Were you really? Okay, yeah. Okay. So
I have a funny story if you want to hear it.
I absolutely want to hear it.
So it was a Nike All Asia camp. I was there with Big George Rabb, and I was there, and I was kind of helping there. I just happened to travel there because I was in China, so I took a plane flight there, and some Chinese, when they're saying they'll be like nigga. The dude, it was a bad interpreter. That's what you need, and you need a great interpreter. So James did have a bad interpreter. So when he was thinking about how to say what James was saying, because you can't use like colloquialisms or phrases like first time I was there, I said, oh man, so-and-so threw me under the bus. And people were saying, you're out of the hospital so fast. You can't say stuff like that. So James' interpreter, as James was talking and using slang, the dude would be kind of thinking, and instead of saying,
it's real radio. So no.
So he was saying the N-word. But it's just the way that they say, so James was kind of looking at me, the only black dude there, like, what's up with this dude? And I had to swap out the interpreters. So that was a funny James Harden story. But he's with Adidas now.
So yeah, he switched sides. But so he. In that environment, we know Daryl Morey, who is the current president of the Philadelphia 76ers, was with James in Houston. They have a relationship. Daryl became under fire a few years back for some comments that he made regarding China. So obviously James' comments today, letting them go in China, and we'll get to them in 1 second, seemed purposeful. But business-wise, does this impact James at all? We will get that answer from you in a second. We're going to play the clip and go from there.
Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of. Let me say it again. Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of.
So effectively, publicly, James is saying that you're not going to play me this year. You're going to trade me to some place I want to be, and that you haven't been dealing with me fairly. So do you think that at this point in his career, where James is on the downside of his career, right, that coming out with these comments, being so public with it, being calculated in a sense, do you think that hurts him at all?
I think it does. It probably puts him, because for one, we don't know the question that was posed beforehand, right? So people obviously knew. People don't know James and Daryl's real relationship. They're going back to that whole thing he said a couple of years ago, which he spoke out of turn in terms of political stuff that happened. That's the first thing. And then secondly, they had already said in the press yesterday that they've ceased conversations on trying to trade him, and that he is report to camp. So for him to say that he's never going to play for him, he's trying to put the heat on, I think, for them to trade him after a day before they said that they've ceased all trade, conversations with teams. So I think it was strategic. I think that James and Daryl have a long history together. And what I know of the negotiations last year when he had signed, there may have been some commitments that James thought that he was going to be taken care of long term, because that's why he doesn't. That's the issue he has. He wants a long term. He wants a 4-year something deal. And like you say, in my opinion, he is on the decline. He's not the same James Harden. And you typically don't get those fat, juicy contracts for 4 years.
When we come forward, we'll have more with Damon Haley, and we will talk more about his entrepreneurial journey, some of the superstars that he's worked with, and, of course, get into more trending topics and headlines. You were checking out RSVP with Jill Munroe here on KBLA Talk 1580. News and sports is up next.
RSVP with Jill Munroe is your go-to show for staying in the know. More engaging conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Esther Dillard, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Multiple reports say 10 indictments have been returned by the grand jury in Georgia's election interference case against former President Donald Trump. It's not yet known if Trump himself was indicted because the case reportedly involves several defendants. We may later learn details on the charges. Trump is accused of breaking state election laws in the weeks after Election Day in an effort to remain in power. The charges center around actions that include allegedly making false claims of ballot fraud and pressuring local officials to find him more votes to overturn the election. Black Democratic Fulton County District Attorney Bonnie Willis has been investigating Trump and his allies for more than 2 years. Trump has denied any wrongdoing. And that's the latest. I'm Esther Dillard from the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Hi, we're Comparion Insurance Agency. Never heard of us? We know. But to help it stick that our local agents are insurance experts, we're going to say local agent 3 times in the next 5 seconds. Local agent, local agent, local agent.
Find us at ComparionInsurance.com.
Gotta stay fresh, ma.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
Did you know addiction to drugs like meth or cocaine is a disease and not a choice? If you have stimulant use disorder, you, your family, and friends may have a lot of questions, including where to start. Choose Change California can help. Make a change today and find a proven treatment option for you at choosechangeca.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
The rent is too damn high. KBLA joins you in calling for affordable housing. The LA Tenants Union is a diverse, tenant-led movement fighting for the human right to housing for all. The LA Tenants Union demands safe, affordable housing and union rent control. They organize against landlord harassment, mass evictions, and displacement, and mobilize for the repeal of the Ellis Act and Costa-Hawkins Act. The LA Tenants Union is on a mission to strengthen tenants' political power through education, advocacy, and direct action. To get help with your eviction or other landlord-tenant issues, take action for justice, or become a member, visit latenantsunion.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Ew, gotta get rid of this old Backstreet Boys t-shirt.
Tell me why.
Because it stinks, boys.
Tell me why.
I've washed it so many times, but the odor won't come out.
Tell me why.
No.
Odors, it helps you remove them.
Wow, it worked, guys.
Yeah.
Downy Rinse and Refresh removes more odor in one wash than the leading value detergent in 3 washes. Find it wherever you buy laundry products.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking. Now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Meet Joe A, Joe B, and Joe C.
What's up?
3 everyday Joes perfecting their banking with Chase. Joe A is locking his lost debit card with the Chase mobile app. Joe B is cruising toward his new ride with AutoSave. And Joe C's Chase banker is helping him budget to go back to school. Tools that help protect. Support for what's next. One bank that puts you in control. Visit chase.com/checking. Chase. Make more of what's yours.
Chase mobile app is available for select mobile devices. Messaging and data rates may apply. JP Morgan Chase Bank and a member FDIC.
Some people won't give you the real talk on drugs, but it's time we know the facts. Fentanyl is killing people. It's a powerful opioid, often made illegal. It can even be pressed into counterfeit pills that resemble prescription medications. Just 2 milligrams, about the size of a few grains of sand, can potentially be lethal. This isn't an ad to scare you, but it is an ad to make you think twice. Get the facts. Go to realdealonfentanyl.com. This message is brought to you by the Ad Council.
You're listening to K-Trip, where we play all the best classic water-wasting hits like Sprinklers in the Rain and Leaky Faucets. They're tunes from another time because now that we face a hotter, drier future, every drop counts. Despite an extremely wet winter, keep using less water, fixing leaks, and reusing indoor water for your garden. Visit SaveOurWater.com for more ways to conserve. Up next, brushing your teeth with the water on. K-Trip. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio that's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. Curating the most compelling stories and delivering them straight to your ears. You're listening to RSVP with Jill Munroe on KBLA Talk 1580.
Is this intro? you go. Let me let the chorus go. That's soul for real? I got it right. Soul for real? Okay. All right. We do this thing where we test my music knowledge because I am my knowledge goes deep, deep. You are locked into RSVP with Jill Munroe here on KBLA Talk 1580. Shout out to Andy. You know he keeps the playlist lit with the classics. What was that, about 97? Soul for real? Something like that? Lower 95. Wow. Okay. Almost 20 years ago. I can know. More than almost 30 years ago. Listen. The time. I am vintage. I'm a classic, and I thought it was 20 years ago. So apparently, I'm not as old as we thought. That's okay. You are locked into RSVP with Jill Munroe. We are here with our guest Damon Haley, who is an entrepreneur, business development mentor, advisor. Listen, I like to call myself the queen of the pivot, but you have really pivoted from your early career that had nothing to do with sports, nothing to do with entertainment, and you found your way and worked with legends, titans across the game, the game. How does one find themselves in those type of situations? Obviously, you stepped into one. Could be luck or, focused and driven intent. But to continue to do that, and we're here, as I was just let known, the 90s was 30 years ago. So, I mean, how does that happen as far as a career?
I think, one, you got to go hard at everything you're doing at that moment, right? Because I could have not dreamt that I was doing the things that I was doing. So I mentioned, I'm from Wash House, where I was really a math science dude, because I just said, hey, if there's one answer out there and I can consistently get it quicker than you, I'm better than you. And so that was kind of my thing, and I had some good teachers that had me going. I mean, my science teachers were probably my favorite ones. They had an interest in me. And so I went to Berkeley, and I fell into like a quantitative economics thing. Once again, I was always good at numbers. I can always figure out that thing. And then I just applied it to business principles, mostly finance and accounting and all that kind of stuff. And I was good at it. So when you're good, it's like being a tall kid. They're going to put you in basketball.
Right.
So I was good at it, but just because I was good at it didn't mean it was my thing, And so it took me to figure that out. Now I'm good at it, which means I'm performing well, and then I get the benefits of that. So after Berkeley, I had done well enough there to go to business school. And so Michigan, Wolverines in the mix, right?
One of the top.
Yeah, and so, but I was always interested in sports because two of my best friends were on the team at Cal, and I just was always in the mix of what the athletes were doing. I was always interested in the business side of it. And then when I got to Michigan, it was really, I was Fab Five. I was there with the Fab Five, and I don't want to date myself, but I was there with the Fab Five, Desmond Howard on the Heisman thing, Barry Sanders and with the Lions, and then the back end of the Bad Boy run. So it was really sports stuff, but it wasn't a clear path for me. And so I take this gig at Chevron where I'm doing pretty good, but then I got the call from Jerry Erasmi at Nike, who I went to business school with, and was like, yo, Nike's looking for somebody to launch their West Coast marketing office. And it was a talent play for the decision maker. He said, LA, the Bay, which are the top markets, because I was living in the Bay at the time. You cool, you got enough swag, the culture and all of that. And he just bet on me, even though I'm never taking a marketing class in life, ever. And so I said, cool. If you believe it, if you like it, I love it. and I did the interview thing, and they actually offered me the job, and then I turned it down, and then they sweetened it, and then I accepted it. And so I moved from the Bay down to LA, and so it's just being able to show up and impress. And I still had to work hard to get into the marketing lingo and figure out what marketing was for me and what marketing meant for Nike, because it wasn't no game plan. It was nothing there, and I think that's part of what he figured. Damon's going to figure it out, period. And so it worked out.
It really did. I mean, so, again, I'm just going to go over a couple of names. You worked with Magic Johnson, arguably the NBA player that set the tone as far as business, and sort of spreading that out with real estate and the charitable component and things before Jordan. Obviously, we know what Jordan did, who you also worked with, and his connection. We know that LeBron took sort of what both of them did and has expanded it beyond what anyone could think. And when you think about Kobe, I think the way that Kobe was embedded into this market and really brought together in a lot of ways the Black and Latino communities here and, dug in with that was something that prior to that I don't feel like we really saw with an athlete as far as community and culture and connection. So I want to ask you along those lines, what has changed for you as far as the definition of culture as you look back on your journey?
I think that culture is now digital expression. So I think that, hey, you take Big Magic, right? You take he was one with the people. You can see him smiling. You can see him shaking hands. You can see him at the Starbucks. I mean, he really engulfed people. He didn't need security or anything like that. That's what he kind of believed in, connecting people, connecting dots live. I think that you're right about Kobe, and I think that if he were here with us today, he'd be doing something interestingly extraordinary, because that's where he was. He's probably of all the guys I work with, he's probably the most smartest, intelligent, and global. And that's why I liked him. And you're right. He said, I'm going to do the Black thing, and, kudos to the crew, Drew, Jerry, you. I'm going to do the Black thing, but then, hey, his wife, his queen was Latino, so I'm going to do that. And then also he's like, okay, D, I need to do the China thing too. And so what does that look like? So he was probably the guy who understood the most people. And he wasn't a warm and fuzzy guy, but he still would connect through learning a language, because he knew Italian, he knew Spanish, and then he'd break off some Mandarin, and learned it. I was like, dang, you know more than me, that kind of thing. And so he got that. Now Jordan, interestingly enough, he never was connected, and product kind of helped him, just through the Jordan. He ain't a hip hop dude. Never see him, around that stuff. He came in a different time. So for me, I think now is, and I say digital expression, is you can post and people think, you can do selfie, like LeBron. He was rolling his old school.
Was that a Range Rover?
With the green car today?
Yeah,
he was singing MJ. No, it was a refurbished car of some sort, like a Chevy or something like that. And he's doing Michael Jackson. I forgot what the song was, but like I knew what he was doing today.
Day and night.
Working day and night.
Exactly.
So we don't have to see him or touch him. He can show us what he's doing, and millions of people can see. So I think from a culture standpoint, you can tap the culture remote. You don't have to be like you don't have to really embrace it.
Boots on the ground.
You don't have to be that at all. And so I think that when we were, rolling, at least, in the 90s to 2000, I think we lost it around 14, 15, You had to touch people, excite people, tantalize people, and give them real FOMO, the fear of missing out or not being there. Now, you don't have to. You can DVR, you can save it and all that kind of stuff. See it when you want to. It used to be when I worked with HBO, it was video on demand. They hated that because you couldn't sell Sunday night anymore.
Right.
You know, that kind of stuff. So I think that's the thing. It's more broad, but it's not deep and intense.
When we come forward, we'll have more with Damon Haley on RSVP with Jill Munroe. You are locked into KBLA Talk 1580.
Trending topics and the hottest happenings. You're listening to RSVP with Jill Munroe on KBLA Talk 1580.
Have you heard about Lendistry? Lendistry is a national black-led small business lender that is headquartered right here in LA. Once you've started your business, Lendistry provides flexible financing options starting at $50,000 to help you access the affordable capital needed to grow. Whether financing is needed to increase working capital, acquire a business, purchase inventory and equipment, or refinance debt, Lendistry has a solution for you. Lending products range from traditional business term loans and non-revolving lines of credit to SBA 7A loans and commercial real estate financing. Lendistry's free application process is simple and does not impact your credit score. Visit lendistry.com/KBLA to learn more and to get started with an application right from the website.
I'm Dominique DePrima. We can all fall into the trap. I know I do it. But one tip for staying on track is when you have an impromptu purchase that comes up, try making a habit of taking a quick look at your bank account balance before you buy it. It's not just about seeing how much you have in your checking account. Just looking at your account might put the urge to make that impulse purchase into perspective and help you make better choices that'll benefit you for the long term. Whatever your financial goals, U.S. Bank Access Commitment Initiatives can help support you in reaching them. Access your financial goals at usbank.com/access. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 joins you in standing for education as a right, not a privilege. Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science is a private, non-profit, community-founded, student-centered university committed to cultivating diverse health profession leaders who are dedicated to social justice and health equity for underserved populations. CDU does this through outstanding education, clinical service, and community engagement. Recently, Charles Drew University made history by opening only the 5th medical school at an historically black university. Congratulations, South LA, and congratulations to the dean of the medical school, Dr. Deborah Provost-Stiff. CDU is now training doctors and providing $90 million in annual economic benefit to Watts and surrounding neighborhoods. To apply for medical school, get more information, or sign your child up for the Junior Doctors Saturday School program, visit cdrewu.edu. That's cdrewu.edu. At KBLA, we are dedicated to equity in education and ending healthcare apartheid, and we don't back down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Now back to more captivating conversation on RSVP with Jill Munroe.
It's Jill Munroe. You are checking into RSVP with Jill Munroe here on KBLA Talk 1580. I am joined by my guest, Damon Haley, entrepreneur, all-around Renaissance man, author, the book of DH, Dreams and Hopes.
DH, baby.
DH, baby. So, Andy, before we came forward, you had a question or a comment that you wanted to speak about.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Mr. Haley, I just want to say what you said about Kobe was just really, really profound, you know, being a Kobe guy. But I guess it's kind of like an observation / question / statement based off of what you just recently said. And, you know, Kobe obviously growing up in Italy or whatnot, right? When he came back to the States, it was like he was ridiculed for being different. But fast forward to him being an athlete and getting into the business game, in a lot of ways you can say that, you know, him growing up in Italy kind of helped him as far as connecting with the people. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think he was definitely different. If you think about, you know, him being, you know, drafted, you know, the mid-90s or so, and what was happening in the world, and the typical NBA guy, you know, and I'd say AI, like Iverson. He wasn't an Iverson dude, you know, and type of guy. He just wasn't that type of guy. He was cultured, like I say. He was smart. I think academics was different. So he did have that rap phase where he tried to be the same.
I remember it intimately.
Right.
I worked on a project with him for that.
He tried to, I think he did. He was just trying to fit in and do his thing. And then as he grew up as a man, he grew into who he really was, which was a cultured type of guy, And so I think that we talked about him touching the black community, in Latino/Mexican here in LA community, and then once again, I know what he did in China, and obviously he went back to his roots of Italy. So he was by far your most global NBA guy, like ever right now. Even though you have Europeans that come over here, and so it didn't hurt that he was in LA. They gave him, a lot of media appeal and all of that. So I think him being different was to his advantage, because you get guys now that are growing into where Kobe would want to be, like stuff like wine. Him coming from it, he knew wine way before all of these other guys got into wine in their 30s. It's laughable when all of a sudden wine becomes a big thing.
I call them me too. They all drink wine. They all play golf now.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things. They all have French bulldogs as pets. So they very much follow behind each other and whatever the hot thing is.
And Kobe was because those guys, the typical guy, that a black American dude, he makes a little money, and then probably in his late 20s is when he gets out of that phase of buying out the bar and doing all that kind of stuff. And then you become mature and think about grown-up things. Kobe was just already there, I think, ahead of a lot of the guys in his era, if you will. Now guys are more exposed, and they might get it a little earlier, but he was unique. Definitely unique in that way. And then you think about his investments, you think about the dude getting an Oscar, all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's probably not going to be another NBA guy in a long time that's going to get an Oscar.
I think Kevin Durant got one last year, but not like Kobe.
Yeah, he wrote
part
the
of a
thing.
project.
Yeah, he wrote the thing. He was in the center of the thing, and it was about a passion that he loves. He took an idea and a piece and he turned it into something extraordinary because of his creative genius. And he was by far the most detailed dude I had been around. I mean, I'd have to be ready and prepared when I was around him, because I knew he was going to ask me questions that he cared that much to ask, stuff that other people wouldn't ask or really didn't care about. He didn't go through motions. He was real about everything he did.
That is facts. That is facts. Very intense. So, being that I kind of asked you how your definition of culture has changed following your career journey, and we just highlighted someone like Kobe who was different and sort of ahead of his time, but still had his struggles. The fact that you mentioned that you were good in math and science early, right? And there's so much emphasis on STEM currently, right? And we're still kind of revving up for that. What do you think the disconnect is between our community? Because I feel like, not an easy reach, but I don't think that it is as out of reach as sometimes it is made to be. And I don't know if it's just an exposure thing or the way things are set up. But for you, as someone who grew up during a time when there was not necessarily special emphasis placed on it, it was just, education as a whole. Why do you think that it is something, as far as an interest as us as a group, have not latched onto more?
I think it's just distractions, to be honest. I hate when people say they're not good at math. I mean, I always show my phone, and I have some young people show me their phone. I say the reason why our times are exactly the same is because there's a satellite in outer space that's saying that means that math and science works not even on Earth. And I say that's how important and vital it is, where if you go 3,000 miles any directions, the laws change, what side of the street you drive on change, the history changes, the language changes, all of that kind of stuff. But the math and science stays true. And being a global dude like I am, I think it's focus. When I see, I've been to all the continents except Australia, but when I see that and I see the intensity at which they're educating kids, that those kids are not trying to be athletes, those kids are not trying to be rappers, they're not trying to be entertainers, they're not trying to tell jokes and all that kind of stuff. And I just think that that's our go-to a measure of success. And I think that when you're a young person, you see that and you want to do it versus being a smart person.
Don't you think entertainment is America's greatest export, though?
It is. Oh, yeah. Music, in particular, is the biggest export. I mean, you see what Beyonce's doing all around, and all that, and we know it is the biggest export, to be honest. Numerically, I read that somewhere. So I just think, but if you sitting there in a Middle Eastern country, or you're in an Asian country, or even a European country, you're like, can't be a star, so I got to learn something. And they come, they create interesting and dynamic things on a faster pace than what we do. Because there's still some our culture's still doing something, but we're not doing it in mass. You talk to 10 young black boys, maybe 2 of them want to be scientists or something academically driven. The other 8 is going to be entertainment or sports driven.
Do you think, and we'll talk about this when we come forward, but do you think that it's just as simple? Because I actually, coming up in the next hour, I have a clip from Vince Staples. He's a rapper from Long Beach. And he was talking about sort of related to this, but not exactly the same, that a rapper can't break through now that doesn't fit those certain stereotypes or aesthetic. Mm-hmm. He said if someone came along trying to be original but being a rapper and said, hey, I want to be an astronaut, nobody's going to listen to that. And people always point to, well, we don't show enough positive images in our media in order for people to ascribe for that. And I believe that we did at one point in time. Do you think it's as simple as if we put more of these images into our pop culture functions that it will be something that will turn around?
I think it will help. I think at the end of the day, even I look, everybody can't. You take the 50 years of hip hop, okay? Puffy's a billionaire, maybe. Jay-Z's a billionaire, and then I think Dre, right?
Right.
But that's just 3 out of I don't know how many. It's kind of like.
And the rest that are doing what you think. Nas made a lot of money, venture capital, investing. Chameleonaire, who only had a minor hit, but took that, got really into the VC and investing space. So,
you make money off technology and private equity. Because you think of the list of billionaires, you got Jordan, Oprah. You only got about 5 people, all from entertainment. And then you got David Stewart, and then you got Robert F. Smith. But all them other white folks,
it's all types of things.
Yeah. It's real estate if you owe, but it's tech and it's private equity. That's how you get rich. You don't get rich playing basketball. You just don't. And so I think it's more that it's hard for us to see because we want to see role models. We want to see people that look like us being rich, but it's just hard to see that.
When we come forward, we'll have more with Damon Haley. You are locked into RSVP with Jill Munroe here on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Esther Dillard, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Multiple reports say 10 indictments have been returned by the grand jury in Georgia's election